Southern Illinois. For 60 years, this has been your home for Saluki basketball.
Dogs win it. They're in the final 32. 61-51 over Holy Cross. The Sweet 16 is even sweeter when SIU's in there. And the Dogs are Sweet 16 for the second time in 5 years.
This is Echoes of the Arena, 60 years of Ventura Center magic on the Saluki Royalty Podcast Network. Now, here is the voice of the Salukis, Luke Martin.
Welcome back to the Saluki Royalty Podcast Network as we are in Echoes of the Arena, 60 years of Ventura Center magic. And felt, there was so much good vibes from our previous podcast with an extended round table of the last Sweet 16 team for SIU. Well, this weekend, of course, is the Sweet 16 for the NCAA tournament. So why don't we continue some of that look back with two other huge key figures of that 2007 Sweet 16 team. And that's Randal Falker and Tony Boyle. We dive into what you can expect, what they remember most about those years, the intense practices, most importantly, a key member of the Lowry family that was able to feed them and bring a whole lot of love to the Saluki program, and why that team also flourished and had so much success, and updates on where they're at in their current life. So let's not waste any more time and get in to our Sweet 16 look back in 2007 with Randal Falker and Tony Boyle.
It's been so much fun this year with 60 years of Ventura Center. It's hard to believe that's been 60 years inside the arena on SIU's campus. We have been talking to some of the greats who have played in the arena throughout their time in those 60 years. And I thought it was fitting that, this weekend it's the Sweet 16 in the NCAA. So why not catch up with more members of the last Sweet 16 team for Southern Illinois? We are lucky to be joined by Randal Falker and Tony Boyle, who were members of that team. Randal, Tony, thanks so much, guys. It's good to catch up with you and for our fans to be able to see you. Tony, we'll start with you. When you think of that time, man, when you think of that Sweet 16 year, what's just the first initial memory, the first thing that you always go to when it comes to that team?
It would come down to all the hard work coming, just bundling everything up, all the sweat and the time, and just into just a game at a time, and all the way to the last game, to the Sweet 16. It was satisfying to get there, but we were on a mission to go further, honestly. But yeah, exhilarating.
Tony, Randal, he talked about, man, that was kind of the expectation for you guys. And look, it was built, winning Arch Madness the year prior, having success, of course, at Southern, being 6 straight NCAA tournaments. Everyone knew what the expectation was, and it's been shown that getting to the Sweet 16 could happen at Southern with Jermaine Dearman and those guys earlier on. What do you believe, Randal, outside of just what you guys saw every day, what led that team to have that type of core belief that what you ultimately accomplished is something you guys could accomplish?
Well, I think that we had just phenomenal defense, and everybody was bought in. Looking back at it is different, than being there. When you're there, it's just like Tony said, one game at a time, where one practice, you're just trying to make it through practice. Honestly, that they were that hard. You're trying to make it through summer conditioning and fall conditioning, and after that, you get to the games and it's like, oh, this isn't too terrible, but it was interesting. It was kind of, for me, it was just kind of being in the moment. I knew I kind of needed to play well, but I never thought about, I never really thought about like, hey, I expect us to win this, or I expect us to go this far, or, for me, it was just the current play, and that was it.
I hear so much about these practices, guys, and how I think everyone, in a way, in today's day and age, would hope that their practices are hard, are difficult, but it is constant. Whether the coaches talking to Rodney Watson, Chris Lowry, you guys, all the former players. I guess we can go to you for this, Tony. Like, what was it that made these practice? Like, describe what a practice was like and how tough it was for
You know,
you
you, you
on
know,
a day
you know,
basis.
you're bringing up PTSD stuff right now. Like, I don't
Hey,
want
Randy.
to.
Well, here I'll give you a really good example. So it was extremely physical, and it was about as close to a fight as you can get. But for example, Randall being a big and myself being a big, we would do one-on-one drills or team drills. And, some days you'd feel a little more honored than others. And, if I went and cracked Randall pretty hard and he just look at me and kind of go, okay, that's what you want, huh? That's where you're going to go. Okay. Okay. And I promise you, the next turn, the next play, my back was getting popped or something was going to happen because he was coming back at me. And that that was the mentality of all of us. And it just wasn't me or Randall. It was everyone was just tough. And none of us shied away from physicality whatsoever, especially in practice. And in a lot of ways, you could get caught up in that and try to, get your mindset. All right, this is the game. We have refs here, and calm it down, to a level of acceptability for the refs.
Legality.
But I mean, the practices, it really started before the practice. And Randall mentioned this. I mean, it was the conditioning. I mean, the conditioning. I never thought that I would be in that type of condition, which was phenomenal. Anytime that we had a punishment, we had a run, and I would always look at Coach Watson at the time, Larry Owens, whoever, and I'm like, really? Like, we're in the best conditions of our life, and just because we messed up, you're gonna make us run now? I'm like, okay, what do you got?
Horrible. I gotta.
And go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, there's a story where I remember Tony missed something, and I think he was like out in the lake or something, and this guy, they they bring us all to the football field, so we got to do our normal running, which is horrible. And they get done and they just like, all right, we got 50 pennies for Tony, so we're just looking. They put Tony on the bleachers, and he had to take 50 pennies all the way up to the top of the bleachers.
And they said they counted every one of them. There was no sneaking two or three. It was everyone. And that was also what probably the first 3 weeks I was at SIU.
Yeah. It was to the point that I think everybody on our team had to do soul searching to
Yeah.
decide if you really wanted to be there. You know what I mean? Because there was numerous times that I'm like, man, I can't do it, and I like, you know what I mean, like it was tough to the point. It was constantly like teetering that breaking line, and I think that's kind of one of the things that they had issues with after we all kind of left was they had higher end players, and we all got there and we all had this underdog mentality. Not a lot of didn't have a lot of high end opportunities and all that kind of stuff. So Southern was like the best that we all were doing. You know what I mean? Or going there, like going there was like the epitome, like an NCAA tournament run, Sweet 16 run. These guys, and it just wasn't a lot of opportunities for us. I think, well, I can say that for me, where you felt like, hey, if I leave here, I'm good. Where like you get the other guys, like Booker, Roundtree, Dale, Dillard, you know, Brandon Woods, like those guys were high end
Defense?
recruits, huh?
Defense? We playing defense? Coach.
Like like you got to tone that down because you had a different type of player who wasn't so committed to running out there and trapping a ball screen 3-4 times in a possession while getting back and then war rebound and then running a court and then setting 18 screens. Like it was hard, or picking up full court. Like that stuff was people ask me if I would do it again. Not in my life would I ever want to go relive that.
But Randy, I guess looking back at it, I've always been told that your mind is the weakest part of your body. And in a lot of cases, I don't think a lot of people have ever been pushed that hard physically, but also mentally. And being able to keep everything,
Yeah.
on track here it was just as hard as the physicalityness of it. But looking back, it made me a stronger person. I
Well,
mean,
it was very Marinish. Like,
well, I mean, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like we could all qualify for basically a decent level of Marine with our level of fitness.
No doubt. But yeah, say the least, it was an extremely physical event. Uh, yeah, it was a lot different. So I watched Brian Mullins have a practice when he first got here, and they're playing music, and everyone's kind of just chilling and got a different vibe. And I'm looking at Brian, I'm like, well, what is it, man? He's like, oh, this is kind of how we do it now. I said, huh, this is different. And he goes, yeah, man, things changed a little bit. And I said, well, when we were coming out just to practice, I mean, there might have been a little bit of goofing around in the locker room, but then everyone started, getting their mind right, knowing exactly what we were going into. Things have changed quite a bit, like Randall said.
Well, and to kind of dive into that a little bit, and I don't want this to dominate the conversation because I want it to be about those really good memories of the Sweet 16 team. But as you guys are describing all of these, you know, everyone wants to talk about you hold teammates accountable, all of those things that go to today. There were hard times, physical times that you guys had to go through, mental gymnastics, whatever you want to describe it. But yet, through all of it, Tony, when you saw Randall come on this call, you smiled. You guys, like the friendships that you've built, are still so tight and close. Yet, even when you're in that moment, and either one of you can take this, whoever wants to start. How did you guys, well, I think is a challenge for today's athlete, and some of it has to do with all the rules and the way they are in terms of when you can leave, how you can leave, all of those stuff, the transfer portal, NIL, whatever you want. There's a lot of excuses that you can point to. But my point is when times did get tough, how did you guys make sure that you never took that personally? You knew that being accountable and holding everybody accountable and living to that standard was just part of the day-to-day life of what being a Saluki was.
Penny Pub.
I don't know. Well, the bonding afterwards, but I would say, you know, the respect that we had for each other, and we didn't have to worry about like if Randall and I or Matt and I or whoever, whatever combination, were playing defense or offense, and offense is a little different. I'll mainly stick to defense, but stuff's gonna happen. You're gonna make a bad judgment call because how our defense is, and I knew that they had my back, and I know that Randy, if I was out there, that I would cover him the best that I could, and that's the biggest part of it is we didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah,
We really were in sync where it's like, hey, you should have went out there a little faster. You should have done this. I got you. Let's go. And that was it.
yeah. I think one of the bigger deals was we had to try to not to kill each other in practice, and because I mean we were like you said we can get real chippy on certain plays. You might try to box out, and you got Tony and at 250, 240, just running into your back hard as he possibly can. You got Coach Watson screaming at you. You know what I mean? And it's just like sometimes you just got to kind of look at him like are we really gonna do this today? Like, you know what I mean? And it was tough, but I think the biggest thing that we did was after we had friction or things got a little chippy in practice, we always went back to the same locker room. We always sat back down there, and we had teammates that would make fun of the situation. So you weren't so it wasn't like you had to sit there and just deal with that awkwardness. Now you're coming in there laughing at what's going on in practice, and now you two are laughing. And next thing you're at his house. He's at your house or whatever. We're meeting somewhere. We're doing something together, and we're both laughing at it together. I think one of our biggest things was the fact that after the practice, like nobody took it so seriously and nobody instigated it further. Like a lot of times now you get on social media, you have issues like that where the issue, which should have been confined, is now much broader because now it's being spread out or your teammates are talking about it. Now you feel like there's some type of, there becomes a true rift. Where us, it was just like it stayed in the locker room and it was laughed at.
Discrepancy was handled within practice, or and we didn't have the energy to do that, afterwards. And another beautiful thing was kind of to add on to what Randall said. It didn't matter what part of the world you were from on that team, because we had Indiana, Missouri, Illinois, I think Kentucky, so a good mix, and we all hung out. We all were fairly tight, and that helped out a lot, in my opinion.
Look, I know Coach Lowry was really hard on you guys in terms of coaching that toughness, the grit, et cetera, all those things that get talked about with your program. But one of the areas I heard that also helped through that was how much fried chicken would you guys have from Erica when you guys would go over to the Lowry household as teams?
Miss Lowry was the saving grace of that team, and I don't think she gets enough credit for it. And I always kind of say it like she was, she was the softness, the love. You know what I mean? Where if it was really bad, you can give her a call. She'll make you something like you know what I mean? Like she was kindness, and in a true form. So big ups to Miss Lowry for. I think she was the glue that really helped the team together.
I would agree with that because Coach Lowry. I mean, he was a tough coach, and he expected that, and he knew what he expected, and we knew he was going to come at us, And Miss Lowry, she was always, like Randall said, just nice, and then definitely more of the softer aspect of that whole dynamic. A lot of fried chicken.
Yes, yes, I have.
What about the banana pudding with the vanilla wafers in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good. I wasn't even a pudding fan. That was good.
I heard whatever it was that Erica made, it was really, really good. And I heard that was a big part of your guys and your teams.
Yeah. Coach would give us a terrible week of practice, and he'll know it. And I feel like he would just go back and be like, Erica, like my guy's about to break you. We gotta have a dinner because they ain't gonna make it.
Well, when you think of the specific season, early on, you guys play Virginia Tech, who ultimately you see later on in the NCAA tournament, and that MTE in Orlando kind of forgot after talking with Tony Young that Pat Beverly was on that Arkansas team. And you think of some of the talent that you guys went up against during those days, it's pretty remarkable too. But as that season's going along, as you said, the practices are harder than the games. The expectation level, what the potential of the group could be. Was there any point in time for either of you where you're like, yep, this group has the right DNA makeup to get to where we ultimately want to go?
I would say that, yeah, at a certain point, because when we're playing out of conference and guys are, other teams are not used to what we're. I think my phone froze up. Oh, are you good?
Yep, you're good. You're good, Tony.
Okay. So it's like, yeah, we're playing out of conference, and playing teams that we've never played, and they're not used to our defensive scheme and how physical and how it's basically smash mouth floor brand new basketball. And we didn't score a whole lot, but really that wasn't the objective. It was, you're not going to score more than we're going to score. And that was a principle. But yes, to answer your question is, yeah, I think we all felt that, especially once we got, past conference and started, you know, there had to be there was a part of me that I knew that we had a chance at this just because, the makeup, the chemistry that we had and the grit and the toughness and the right attitude. And there wasn't a whole lot of, there was other teams that played smash basketball, but, I would like to say not like us. We brought it every game, and I think that was really hard for other teams to simulate.
Yeah,
But
I
we'll
definitely,
add one thing to simulate because they found out when they stepped on the court with us, didn't they, Randy?
unfortunately, but tagging on with what Tony said, I felt like we could be beaten by anybody, and we could beat anybody. We had to be, 100% ourselves, and bring that intensity. And we knew there wasn't a team in the nation that, we didn't have a legit chance to beat. I think we all felt like that. But, in the moment, I was just worried about the next, so I was just worried about the next play. It was only the next play for me because like you were out there, you're redlining the whole time while you're playing. It's so much work, you know, and I don't think people really know what it's like, pushing around, moving around a 240, sprinting as a 245-pound guy, then running out trapping and then running back and then getting hit by a 260-pound guy, then moving him out the way, and then you know what I mean. And now that's one possession, and like that was one possession. So
But I don't think there's no secret on this, but there was a little bit of resting in our motion on offense just to kind of calibrate back from what we just did.
for
Anyway,
for you, not I mean for you maybe, but I mean it was pretty. It was screen, roll, screen.
but comparably, that was easier. that was
It,
that's,
it, it was it was easier.
that's how I'm looking at it. That took less energy.
Offense attack the offensive rebound.
hmm
Now you're in a horrible position. Now you got to run back even faster. They're going to do
hmm
an early ball screen, maybe if they don't scout too well. Now you trap it. Now you catch it on the roll. 2-3 possessions,
hmm
nothing fast.
Yep. But you
Yeah,
handled it. We handled it. It's all good.
I almost died a couple times.
I think Randall lost some years of his life, is what I'm gathering out of this.
Probably,
I died.
probably just a few years. Probably just a few.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is you look at, what's great about, Ken Palm and so many analytical sites now is you can even do some comparison of what current teams are doing versus even what you guys were doing within the Ken Palm era. And you look at Drake this year, Drake was right about the same amount of possessions that your guys' games would be, which was right around 61 possessions per game. And I bring that up because as you're describing Randall and Tony, it's not like every night that you guys showed up to the arena, they were all blowouts. There are a lot of close games, down to the wire, final possessions that you had to maximize your possessions that you had, whether it was getting a defensive stop or executing on offense to finally win a game. Many
We
teams can be in that spot, but don't necessarily get there. What was it about your team that year that when it came to crunch time or winning time, money time, so many ways to describe it, you guys were able to
we
perform at that?
we knew we could get stops. We knew we can get rebounds. We knew that we just needed we all figured we just need to make one or two shots in the last 2 minutes. Like that was it. Like we could literally sit back and say, hey, you know what? We're not gonna score, but they damn sure ain't gonna score, And and that was literally it. So you had a lot of confidence and the shots on offense were easier because you were so confident on the defensive end that it was like, hey, you know what? I can shoot this shot with a lot less pressure than a normal shot because we're not thinking like, hey, we got to make this shot because they're going to come down here and score. We're like, hey, if we make this shot, then they're not going to come down and score. If we miss this shot, they're still not coming down and scoring. If we turn the ball over, they still ain't coming out and score. So it doesn't matter what you do. We just need one of these. So, and then you still had us attacking the glass. So you often got a second shot opportunity. You know what I mean? Our motion by then, the other team is a lot, fatigued because they had been running through the grinder. So their shots are much more difficult. And on top of, you know what I mean? So by the end of the game, they're worn down. We're worn down, but we're normally in better conditioning. And then at the same time, there's not really a lot of pressure on you for making or missing. So your shots are a lot easier mentally because you're so confident in what's going to happen on the other end.
And I think some of that comes back to the practices that we talked about. I mean, we were confident. We were confident, and confidence comes from practicing. And the way that we went through our practices definitely showed. And then at that point, that Sweet 16 year, I mean, that's when we still had the home winning streak, and there was a sense of urgency there. And like Randall said, I mean, we can turn it over or mess up, but one fact is not going to change: you're not going to score, and we were damn confident in it.
And having that confidence to go up against Kansas, a game that came down to the very end. I know in the end, it's a loss. It's one of those things that I'm sure sticks with you guys. But what sticks with you just about the last game in the Sweet 16 and how close you guys were to even continuing what all of you guys believed? So many within that team still say, hey, we were Final Four good that year.
Well, I mean, I remember they had a loaded roster. That's one of the big things that I've seen. I think they had Brandon Rush, Sasha Khan. I actually played against Sasha Khan in Russia, which is, pretty cool. He played for Cheska, big, huge team. They had Julian Wright, a couple other guys. They were. You look at the. He was my roommate for a while too. You look at at their roster, and you're just like you guys just didn't mop the floor with like I guarantee they probably you can talk to those guys right now and they might remember one of us. You know what I mean? We were, and I still think that few calls, one mistake here and there, you know what I mean, and the game is different. But even so, it's basketball, and it is a game. And the truth of the matter is like, it's it's just kind of how the dice roll sometimes, and it didn't roll our way. So I don't really look back at it with like a bad memory or anything like that. But I did play a lot longer after college. So for me, it was just one of the things where I was like, oh man, like shit.
I didn't feel like I mean, Randall kind of hinted around on it, but I mean, we were a mid-major in Kansas, and to go to the Sweet 16 is one thing, but go to the Elite Eight, Final Four. I mean, that was a new era for mid-majors to cross into, and it's been done since. And I think Gonzaga had done it before we did it, and but still, there was, it was a tight game. A couple calls either which way was a huge thing, and we had to be 100%. So, say we were 99, that's still percent short, but I mean we were in it. There's no doubt about that. I think all year we felt like we could play with anyone, and I think we at least at a minimum showed that. And I don't think no one on that team wanted to stop, but that is what would stop the train that year.
Look, there's so many moments where I think, fans or et cetera will always ask someone like myself who's been around different teams, like, hey, what's like your favorite game, favorite call, whatever the case may be. And a lot of what you remember is not necessarily the game itself. And what I'm kind of referencing with you guys is it's mostly locker rooms. And as you kind of described, practices. Is there a specific locker room setting, whether emotional high, great win, etc., to man, maybe what was also tough times when you're in that locker room? Is there a moment for either of you within that season that man, like I do remember that. Like that's a moment for me that just sticks out in my brain.
I had one game I remember playing. We were playing Wichita State. This is probably my most memorable game in my college career, and I don't know if it was that year or not. They kind of all blur together, but we were playing, and their guard like tried to shoot a layup on me and kind of hit. He like jumped into me, hit my chest, and he like knocked himself out. And I remember the crowd got so mad, and they were just screaming, and their fans are it's pretty vertical. And I remember like I've never experienced anything like that consistently loud in my life.
It's hard to tell from either of those camera angles that they are holding his head.
And I remember we were all kind of huddled together, and we couldn't even talk to each other. Like we were just like, all right, like whatever. Like nobody knows. Like you basically had like one person was telling the other person like, hey, look in your ear because we can't. Like you have to communicate like literally, like that. And I remember like we get out there and we run the exact play that we're supposed to run, and basically none of us can hear what we're supposed to be doing, but we're so in tune that we are, there. And we go out there and we win the game and the close game and all that kind of stuff. And I think that was like one of those moments for me where it was just like, it was pretty cool because it was like ridiculously loud in there.
And I would agree with Randy on that. I mean, the white noise is static. It's so loud, it's just like static, but amplified, immensely. And then probably one event that sticks out in my head is we're getting ready. We're in the tournament. We won our first two, and then we're going to the Sweet 16, and we were flying back. I don't know what time that the plane landed, but we landed there in Marion, and there were several hundred people, waiting for us there on the tarmac. That was pretty surreal because I want to think it was fairly late. And I'm like, man.
Yeah, we got back at like 2 a.m.
Yeah. I'm like,
like, what you guys doing?
Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is I wasn't expecting this. And they were, the fans were just stoked. And one I was surprised because it was late and everything, but you would have thought it was 8 p.m. They were just ready to go, and that really stuck out with me. It's just like, man, the fan base that we had was really good. I mean, just really good.
This speaks so much for what you guys were able to do, of course, that year going to the Sweet 16. I believe the next year was when College Game Day came to the arena, when you guys were both part of the squad. What did it mean to get where you guys, like Randall, when you think of your early days, which were really good days for Saluki basketball, you too, Tony. I know that year didn't end the way you guys wanted to getting into the NIT, but to know that at the pinnacle of the sport, College Game Day came to Carbondale, Illinois, and that was the first time ever that College Game Day went to a mid-major.
Well, just about the NIT thing, I had a conversation when I was, I want to say, there we had the banquet or whatever after the end of the season, and a lot of the fans were disappointed, and they were like, we didn't make it to the NIT, or, we didn't make it to the NCAA, we made it to the NIT, and I kind of had a conversation with them. I was like, like like you guys are living on this high right now, and I always kind of say that you have to appreciate that high. You have to look back and appreciate it. And like I said, you got to appreciate the moment. And we made it to the NIT, and our team wasn't like anything crazy. Like I said, we had lost 2, 3 players or whatever that left that were supposed to be that next class. So we were running on empty already, and going into my senior year. I think Tony's junior year. We didn't have the continuation where, like, when we were younger, like, I knew if I came out the game, Tony was going in. If you had JT, you had Wesley, you had all these guys that come off the bench and make plays or whatever when these other guys were stepping out. And when we were kind of ending our careers at SIU, my senior year, like, you didn't have that. And that was one of the big issues, was that it didn't continue. So you would play these guys, and then the moment that they got off the court, it kind of fell off a cliff. So it wasn't sustained. That was one of our big issues. And going to the NIT wasn't a bad thing. It was an experience. It was a tough year, and but I mean, even so, it's like you still accomplish a lot, in doing so. Like, we haven't been back in 17 years, and at the time we complained about it. You know what I mean? The audacity of us.
And you played a guy by the name of James Harden, who was at Arizona State in the NIT that year.
Yeah.
He went on to be a pro. Yeah.
I don't even remember playing that guy. I barely remember him. They were like, he's going left. I was like, all right. What's that mean to me?
But to add on to Randy's, what he's saying is, when we were juniors and seniors, I could remember, Lamar Owens and, a few other guys that, they brought us into, the scheme, the system the right way. And I think you had, Randall, when you first got there, was it Dearman? Funny? He was funny.
No, I had Sylvester and Josh.
So, yeah, and they were, but, as Randy came in, he had, 2 dominant big guys that he learned the ropes from. And then Randy was you were a redshirt freshman, right? When I was a redshirt freshman, and then I'm looking at Randall, and he's already ripped out of his mind. I don't know what the hell's going on, because I just got out of high school, and I'm like, man, I seen you about 6 months ago. You didn't look like that. And, but then as the tradition goes, you have those placements, and for us to be successful, that's what it took is the depth and the quality of guys. And then when we had that gap, that definitely hurt us. My junior, senior year, or especially senior year, but Randall senior year, and it was noticeable that that almost that scheme was broken. Of guys to count on, that have your back. Because I was a sixth man, and I'd come in for Matt or Randall right off the bench, whatever was going on, and that was my job.
And we would not fall off at all when Tony came off. If anything, the toughness went up. You know what I mean? Because he could come in there, and he would be more aggressive than me. So I'll get off the game, because it was like, Randall, you can't go out and kill everybody. But Tony would come in the game and be like, hey, I got 18 fouls. If anybody messes with you,
man, they call fouls with me. I entered a fourth, like boop, boop, boop.
Yeah. But it was.
I deserved a lot of them, but I mean,
No, I mean, I think you were just probably on the bench, just like scheming. Like, him.
I was not. I was probably ready to do something on this. Let's go.
Well, no, our fans really appreciate your time, guys. But before I let you go, just to wrap this up, I think our fans, no doubt, follow you guys still and just want to know what you're doing these days. So if you can, just kind of give an update where home is for you. If you have a family, who's a part of your family, all that kind of stuff. Here as we wrap up. And Tony, we can begin with you.
Okay. So I have 3 kids. My oldest just turned 16, and that's a girl. My boy's 12, and He lives in Murfreesboro, and my daughter's 10, and their birthdays are coming up later this month and next month, so they're going to bump up in age. About 4 years ago, I started my own business, Impact Ag. So basically, that's all consistent of agricultural, on-farm needs, Pioneer dealership, Concept Agri-Tech dealership, and then what about doing that? I work at Ag Depot, which they're kind of more of a retail ag-centered store. Dealing with more fertility, and it's all basically direct to the farmer. So I deal with a lot of local farmers, and even some of those still, will still give me crap to this day about stuff that has happened, and we chuckle about it or whatnot, and but it's been good. And then live out at Lake Egypt, building a home, which I don't know if it's the perfect time as I keep getting more bids in, but that's where we're going to do it. I don't have really time to fish after trying to do my best to keep up with the kids and work and everything else, but that's a daily thing in my life right now.
Living in St. Louis now, everybody probably know I played until COVID, so long career. Now, kind of touching, I deal with a little landscaping here, hardscaping with my brother, which just keeps me pretty occupied in the summertime. I do real estate also, so if anybody's moving to St. Louis, give me a call, help you guys out. Or moving from St. Louis, give you a call, I'll help you guys out. But I think one of the main things that I'm doing right now is I'm working on a communication app that helps. The goal is to allow for better communication in families with parents and kids, with husbands and wives, with older parents, and kids, all that kind of stuff. I've been building that pretty hard, and I'm pretty much close to a beta right now. So I'm hoping that will be released in the market by the end of the year. I think it'd be helpful, basketball programs and all that kind of stuff, just because it allows for reflection, which is one of the major thing. I think a lot of us ball emotions up, and we put in our pocket, and then we learn to be disappointed by our partners or family that don't react to it, but they can't react to something that they don't really know. And then I have another app that I'm going to build after this is like a secret, because can't give out too many ideas. But so that's about it. I got a book that I want to publish called Tainted Blood. It's already written, so I'm hoping to get a publishing agent, to pick it up. It's going to be a trilogy, and I got a wife, Britt, 2 dogs, and Brienne. She's going to be turning 16 in September. So life is pretty good. So we'll kind of see what the next step is. I got to come visit Tony in his new house, though. If he ever sends me an invite, I bring it side by side.
Invited. You already know this.
We'll get some time up, and I'll trailer the side by side up there. You take me riding.
Heard that? Let me get the house built first.
No doubt that will be an important piece, and you guys are such a huge important piece of just one of the all-time great teams here at SIU. And both of I know Randal, we were able to see you at Arch Madness, and Tony, obviously I know you're around the area too. You guys are such huge pieces of this thing, and I know you'll continue to be a huge part of Saluki basketball moving forward. Randal, Tony, thanks so much for the time, fellas. It was really great to catch up with you.
Appreciate it. You guys have a good one.
You too. Good to see you, Randy.
The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Saluki Sports Network.